Good morning, everybody. Happy Memorial Day weekend to you. Hope you've got a big weekend planned, and hope you take time to remember those that have sacrificed for our freedom. We might enjoy the things that we do, including studying our Bibles together. If you want to follow along this morning, we will be in the first chapter of Jonah, and starting in the third verse. And the story's moving pretty quickly. God has told Jonah to go to Nineveh, and verse 3 starts with a horrible word. But Jonah rose up to flee into Tarshish from the presence of the Lord, and went down to Joppa, and he found a ship going to Tarshish, and so he paid the fare thereof, went down into it to go with them unto Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. The Lord sent out a great wind into the sea, and there was a mighty tempest in the sea, so that the ship was like to be broken. Then the mariners were afraid, cried every man unto his God, and cast forth the wares that were in the ship into the sea to lighten it of them. But Jonah was gone down into the sides of the ship, and he lay and was fast asleep. Interesting response Jonah gives to the Lord. The Lord commands him to go to Nineveh, and we read those words, but Jonah. But Jonah decided to do differently. He decides to go, it says, to flee from the presence of the Lord. Jonah obviously was a prophet of God, so he was not ignorant of the ways of God, of the power of God, of God's knowledge. But for some reason, he thinks here that he can flee from the presence of God. I don't think necessarily that he really thought he could get away from the presence of God. He knew God was everywhere, but he thought if he got far enough that he might could get out of doing what God wanted him to do. By making this choice, he is choosing to break his fellowship. He is choosing disobedience over obedience, and deciding that he's going to run away. And one thing about disobedience, that decision he made caused him to lose or to leave home, country, family, friends, everything that was familiar to him. Disobedience will always cost us. We really don't even know what all. We know what the Bible tells us about this story and the great fish, but we don't know what all Jonah did lose by making this decision. What he left behind to go and flee from the direction of God. Again, we just simply cannot be disobedient to God without it costing us, without paying a price. Not only does Jonah pay a price, but notice that it says that as he gets on this ship and begins to make his journey, the Lord sends a great wind, and there's a huge storm that comes along. The ship, it says, was like to be broken. The ship was about to be destroyed. The sailors were afraid. Jonah's disobedience didn't just cost him, it put these other sailors in danger. If that ship breaks apart, if it goes down, it's not just Jonah. It is the other sailors. Another thing to understand about disobedience is we put others at risk with our disobedience. One of the other things that I notice in this story is Jonah is being disobedient to his God, but these sailors are crying out to their God. These sailors have more, whatever their God was. You'll notice it's a little g in that verse, so it's not the God of Jonah, it's not the God of Israel that they're crying to, but nonetheless they have more reverence, more desire for their God than even Jonah does. And Jonah, on the other hand, we see he is down in the ship asleep. He is sleeping the day away, even in the middle of the storm. He's not even up helping protect the ship. Jonah is a piece of work. Is the only way I know to describe him at this point. And so the lesson in this piece of the story for us from the story of Jonah is a very simple one. Disobedience always comes with a cost. Disobedience always costs us, and has the potential to cost others. Has the potential to bring trouble onto others' lives. It only stands to reason. I'm a husband, a father, a grandfather. If I'm disobedient and God disciplines me, that ultimately it will, if it goes on long enough, it's going to end up affecting those around me, if not directly, just indirectly. And so disobedience is something that we need to be very aware of, very serious issue to decide, as Jonah does. Jonah makes just a cold-hearted, point-blank decision. I'm not going to do what God says. And he and the sailors around him pay for that decision. Be careful of those decisions that we make, that we're always seeking to be obedient to our God. Have a good day. We'll see you here Monday morning.